It's Tuesday, just after 1 o'clock, just about 1 o'clock. And we're here live. Going to talk about some stuff. We'll see. We'll see what pops up. What I'm thinking of is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I've been immersed in yoga philosophy. More so, we should really call it yoga psychology, as more and more of the yogic wisdom is proving so not just physically. We all know that, it's good for us, but neuroscience is showing how the brain actually responds to yoga, which brings me to the point of the Yoga Sutras. It's funny, our view of yoga, how it's changed in the past, you could say 100 years, how originally yoga was a deep psycho-spiritual practice, that it brought about great changes to how we navigated through life. It was a way very similar to Buddhism. As a matter of fact, we can call it a sister practice, each being a sister practice to the other. The Buddha himself was a yogi, studied with the great yogis of his time before discovering his own path of awakening. And really, the asanas, the physical aspect, was a small part of it. It was designated as, could be viewed as a single posture. Padmasana, which is the lotus posture, which is a traditional meditation posture. And that's what it was meant. It was meant for the steadiness. If we go to this is one of the, you won't be able to see it, it'll be backwards too. Whenever I hold something up, I realize again that we're going to be viewing things backwards. So, it literally begins with the description of what it is, that yoga is experienced in the mind, which has ceased to identify itself with its waves of perception. This is not my favorite translation. Sorry, my mind was drawing a blank there. But I don't feel like running off and getting another. I do actually have another sitting here. I have them all over the place. This one is a little more in depth. And Sri Swami Satchidananda, some consider this one of the top tier translations, along with How to Know God, which was written along with his guru, Christopher Isherwood, who was a well-known writer in the 30s, 40s, even partially during the 50s. And some say Somerset Maugham modeled his character, Larry Durrell, from The Razor's Edge, after Christopher Isherwood. Others said it was different people. Wonderful book, by the way, The Razor's Edge, Somerset Maugham. Highly recommend it. So, anyway, yoga, according to Patanjali, was an ancient sage, lived over 2,000 years ago. The stilling of the mind, the ceasing of the movement and settling in stillness. Basically, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a handbook of the 8 limbs of yoga, a guide to meditation. I believe that asanas are only mentioned through three times in the entire book. They were not the main focus of yoga. How things have changed. Now we think of yoga in modern terms, and we think of postures. We think of an exercise class, which isn't bad because it's a great exercise. However, it misses almost the entirety of yoga, what yoga actually is. This morning in my blog, um, I wrote about chapter 2, verse 46, which is asana is steady. Asana is a steady, comfortable posture. A steady, comfortable posture meant for meditation. Now, what's been realized is that we can bring that um, focus to any posture that we're actually doing. We can bring somewhat of a meditative posture where we really dive into finding the stillness within motion. When we do that, that's when the great changes begin to happen. It deepens our meditative experience when we're sitting. It deepens the absorption of whatever the object of our meditation is. Not to mention the psychological process as it unravels, as I've been mentioning, that we are basically a reactionary machine, our minds, always ping-ponging between three things: aversion, attraction, neutrality. Things being neutral, where we don't have a response one way to the other. There's not much like that. Going through life, we're always heading towards attraction, grabbing, finding out, not this. Thought I wanted this, but I actually want that. And then we go on grabbing for that as well. Or repulsion, aversion, where we're going away from things that make us uncomfortable, things we dislike, things we hate, things we fear. And the world is filled with things like that. It's filled of shiny things over here, scary things over here, and we ping pong between the two. But we don't realize it. One of the 5 afflictions of yoga is ignorance. We think we have free will. We think that we're in charge. We think that we are masters of our own destiny. What we don't realize is how we ping pong back and forth like that. Yogis realized it. The Buddha realized it. Jesus realized it. Lao Tzu, author of the Tao Te Ching, realized it, and they all offered a prescription to get out of it. They're all very similar, and there's differences as well. What matters to us? The thing is, I think people complicate Buddhism, and that you need to be a Buddhist in order to benefit from the wisdom of Buddhism, which you don't. But it is helpful to have a teacher. It's helpful to have a yoga teacher as well. But yoga can also be almost, in many ways, self-learned, or at least pieced together through self-learning. That's basically how I did it. I had started with asanas, the postures, when I was a kid, but they didn't have great meaning for me until later on in life. What hooked me, what really drew me in, was meditation. From meditation, I went on to diving back into the postures, and then working with pranayama, the breath work, and only then did I come to what might be considered the greatest aspect, the greatest psychological aspect of yoga, is the yamas and the niyamas, the restraints and the observances, the practicing of not stealing, not harming, not hoarding, conservation of sexual energy, as well as the observances that we have in the niyamas. Some consider that, if you get that, man, you got all of yoga. it is an 8 limb path for a reason. So I think it's important to, in some respect, practice all 8, and it becomes a rather seamless practice. And you can really um, do it to the point where it becomes a seamless part of your life. You're not, um, you don't have to look for a lot of these outside sources. You don't have to go to a yoga studio or a yoga class. You learn how to meditate. You learn some breath work. Focus on just a few asanas that open up your entire body, opens up the energy system, uh, keeps you loose and limber and healthy. And then you practice the ethical and social restraints of the yamas and pranayamas. There's your yoga path. Practicing the yoga restraints is no different than being a practicing Christian. Problem is, most Christians have forgotten the fact that it's supposed to be a practice. How is it practice? Do Christians spend their day um, doing their best to live up to the teachings of Jesus? If you do, if you're a Christian and you're watching this later, and you do, then that's awesome. You definitely get my respect, my applause. Um, However, it seems that most don't. Most believe that just by saying the Bible, you don't even have to read it, just say the Bible, um, and going to church once a week, if you're lucky, holidays, if you're not, um, then you are a practicing Christian because you believe something doesn't make you a Christian. Belief is hollow. Action is where it counts. Yoga is a path of action. Buddhism is a path of action. Christianity is a path of action, but somehow it's been largely ignored and now forgotten. Um, if we had practiced, there's a majority Christian religion in this country. If it had been practiced, Christianity had been practiced, then we would not be in the political mess that we're in. Politics should reflect our spiritual beliefs, which is pretty easy. You know, Jesus fed the poor pretty much lays out the direction of what we should be doing. Somehow, though, people don't seem to like hearing that. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I'm getting political, and that's not the point. The point is practicing yoga for that transformation of the mind. Now, back to that ping-ponging, the fact that they were ignorant of the fact that we don't have the free will that we think we do, doesn't mean that, well, largely because, again, we're reactive, we're not responsive. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying there's no such thing as free will. I'm saying we don't have it, we don't practice it, because we are addicted to those attractions. We're addicted to running away from the aversions. And we don't realize that we're addicted. We think we're making these choices. Yes, I want to smoke. Yes, I want to eat fast food. No, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work out. I don't want to meditate. But really, it's those attractions and aversions that are making those calls, and we're going back and forth. We are playing out the patterns that we've ingrained in our mind. In yoga, it's called samskaras. And whenever we're triggered, and life is always triggering us, the needle falls in the samskara, and we react, either chasing after something or running away from something. What yoga does, in that one moment of purity, that when I read uh, the Yoga Sutras, chapter 2, verse 46, of just being one pointed in our attention, concentrated, that we are literally smoothing out those patterns so that they have less of a hold on us. And then we start becoming more and more responsive, less reactive, more responsive. We no longer feel tugged by the things we're attracted to. Doesn't mean we don't have attractions. It doesn't mean we don't have aversions. It means that we're no longer tugged in those directions mindlessly. We now see how those patterns play out. Then we have a choice because we can see. But without seeing a pattern, then we're just, again, we're reactionary cogs in a body machine, in a body mind machine. And that is no way to live life. If you want choice, if you want free will, then you need to be aware. Good news is we are aware. We just don't know what. We're aware of the aversions, we're aware of the attractions, but we don't realize the pull that they have on us. And it needs to change. Otherwise, we're enslaved. Happily so, because we think we're getting what we want. We never do. We spend our life chasing what we want, or running away from what we don't want. And we love saying that we're in charge of it, but we're not. It's better to be liberated and free than mindlessly happy, because it's not true happiness. It's not joy, because we can't relax. We might lose this. We get that promotion and we need the next promotion. We get the raise, we need the next raise. We get the new car, we need a shiny new car a year later. We live for vacation 2 weeks out of the year, and then we suffer for the rest of the year. We run away from this great fear of death. We run away from fear of poverty, fear of being alone, fear of all kinds of stuff. And we chase after the shiny objects. We never just pause and just be and find ourselves right here, exactly where we are. Don't have to chase anything. Don't have to run away from anything. You can just relax. Key to enlightenment, relax. We could say it's one and the same thing, to be greatly, greatly relaxed. Just pausing. No longer have to be caught up in that web of, we can call it a web of deceit, really, because we have deceived ourselves that there actually is something shinier in the next moment than the shininess of what we are right now. Doesn't get any shinier than this, my friends. So, how do we do it? Again, 8 limbs of yoga, Buddhism, study the Tao Te Ching, read Sermon of the Mount, practice the Beatitudes. Jesus lays out a clear path in the Beatitudes of what to do. And there's other passages in the Bibles as well. But that's how we do it. For me, I don't think there's any other path with the psychological advantages of seeing and erasing those patterns that you find other than Buddhism or other than yoga. And that includes Buddhism, honestly. Yoga is that deep psychological practice. And it's a joyful practice from step 1 all the way through. Having joy in your practice is a really important thing, in my opinion. We so often think that, the spiritual path is one of drudgery, heavy steps taking us towards a goal of one day being happy. I've mentioned, I think, in the past 2 sessions here, St. Catherine of Siena saying, all the way to heaven, every step to heaven is heaven. All the way to heaven is heaven. Which always, even though I've said it 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row now, it never fails to strike me with its beauty. All the way to heaven is heaven. That's the yogic path. From the very first asana, heaven. From the very first breath work, heaven. From the very first time you sit in meditation, heaven. The path is the end of the journey. It's funny, we think the path is going to take us somewhere. Stepping on the path is the actual end of the journey. You're there. You don't practice it to get from point A to point B to point C. It's not a linear journey. It's right here. You practice it because it opens you up. It breaks you open, literally. And as Leonard Cohen said, everything has a crack because that's how the light gets in. We've forgotten the fact that sometimes we just need to be broken open to let that light come in. Anytime I have an opportunity to quote the great Leonard Cohen, you got to take it. Leonard Cohen was spent 25 years practicing Zen, but in the end, he never felt it brought him closer to the happiness that he wanted. Never alleviated the suffering that he had hoped it would. And he had a heavy layer of suffering about him, a heavy mist, it seemed, reflected in many of his lyrics. And yet he was searching for a deeper joy than he had hoped for. Towards the end of his life, he had found it in some teachings of non-duality by a former interpreter of Nisargadatta Maharishi, who I mentioned quite frequently, who wrote the classic I Am That, who taught Niskara Yoga, which is a natural form of yoga, a spontaneous arising of yoga. Again, not focused on postures, and rightly not even focused on meditation, but more of the acceptance of what is right now in each moment. Again, the natural, spontaneous rising, everything in the moment of reality itself. Niskara Yoga is the practice of reality, accepting, allowing reality as it is without chasing after the shiny objects that we talked about. Hey, Paul from Oregon is here. Good day to you, Paul. How are you? You on a break from your work? I'm just having a short discussion. Be wrapping it up in 5-10 minutes. Path of yoga, transformation, escape from suffering. You know, happy thoughts. Paul says, yes. See if I can get my air quotes on here without looking like a bunny rabbit. Break. Yes, break. I appreciate you stopping by. And you are someone who seems to have found your path. And again, when I use the path maybe a little differently than a lot of people do. We think of our spiritual path as I'm stepping on it to get somewhere. I'm on a spiritual journey. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a spiritual this, a spiritual that. But the path is where we are. It's life. We're not trying to get anywhere. We don't need to get anywhere. We're exactly where we are. What's the need? We're not going to arrive anywhere different than where we are. Joy, happiness, that's a realization. And a realization means it's already present. It just, those veils of illusion that keep us from seeing it, part. You know, it's what I talked about, the absence of free will. We're not the one making the choices. We're the one reacting to the things in life, chasing after the shiny objects, chasing after attractions, running away from our aversions. The path is the realization that we don't see that, and then simply waking up and seeing it. Once the light of awareness is shined on those things, everything lightens up. And that's what Leonard Cohen found towards the end of his life in the teachings of non-duality and the teachings of Nisargadatta Maharishi, is that it only takes a little bit. Life just being a little bit lighter, easier, more relaxed. we smile more. That's enough. That's what I was getting ready to say with Paul from Oregon, that um, a lot of times I feel like I get that vibe from you that things are just a little lighter for you, that you're maybe been through it, and now that you've been through it, you're just more relaxed, a little more joy, a little more accepting. So one day, I extend this invitation to everyone. Anytime someone wants to have a conversation, a live conversation, and bat this stuff around with me, um, would definitely love that from anyone in the, don't even have to be part of the community. It could be a complete stranger, and say, that Eric guy is full of shit and his burpee form sucks, and I'm going to go live and tell him exactly what I think of him. You know what? I would fully accept that and invite you here. You know why? Because I think my charm would win you over in the end. I think when I make the air quotes and I look like a bunny rabbit, you would be so disarmed by my charm. Mocha's here. Mocha says hi. She can vouch for me. I'm a charming guy. Paul from Oregon says, I've accepted my cosmic place, or I'm trying. And again, that's really sort of the vibe that I get, that um, possibly you've been through the ringer in the past and you've come out on the other side. Um, Paul says Eric does have the charm. I appreciate hearing that. Boy, it's been a while since I've had Paul and Mocha here at the same time, which can only mean that any moment the conversation will take an even weirder turn than me doing air quote bunny rabbit ears, as if that is not weird enough. It can only get weirder. So, accepting my cosmic place. That sounds like an end result of a Philip K. Dick novel, honestly. That's what he was leading towards. All of his books was just leading towards accepting that place. Man, if we could all do that, just imagine how relaxed we would be as a people across the board. Paul says, I've made a lot of mistakes and tried to learn. That's what you mean. Laughing out loud. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. For one, you're a musician. And musicians have a tendency to take the hard way for a long time. I don't know if it's a curse of their talent, or that they have to go through that in order, and not all of them come out on the other side, sadly. The greats, you know. But when they do come out of the other side, like Leonard Cohen, it's just a beautiful thing to see. Milka says he's charming and proud, smartass without the comma, minus the comma. Paul says, laughing that yes, I do feel like a flawed protagonist sometimes. Hero of your story, as you rightly should be. Paul says, I still got to watch the Wayne Shorter documentary. Is it on YouTube? There's a great jazz documentary, 1959, the year that changed music. Or is it the year that changed jazz? It doesn't matter. You say music, it means jazz. You say jazz, it means music. Destiny Forever Walks, PhD is here. And she's asking, hello, and how are you? Happy Tuesday. I'm doing well, Destiny. I'm glad you were here. Paul said it's on Amazon Prime. And I do have Amazon Prime, so I can watch that. I have sort of taken a break from watching anything other than um, doing some studies on my um, yoga work, actually, which has been consuming literally in an almost overpowering way. It just shocks me. A year ago, if you had told me that I could possibly be even more drawn in, I'd be like, I'm pretty drawn in. I don't think it gets any deeper than this. And then the floor is pulled out and it gets deeper. And then comes realization that there is no floor. Every time I think there's a landing, it's just going to fall. I'm just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And really, exactly how I want it. I can't think of anything more that I want right now. And then maybe every once in a while, lift my head out and say, you know, share some of this stuff. Convince everyone that there isn't a floor. Convince everyone that there's turtles all the way down. As Paul from Oregon just says, it's all turtles on turtles. Exactly. Which makes me so glad when I'm in a conversation with the insightful and wise and energetic Destiny Forever Walks PhD and the weird, wonderful, and beautiful Paul from Oregon and Mocha McCarty. If I have to pick who's more beautiful, sorry, I got to pick Mocha. Sorry, Paul. It was close. Mocha says, Paul says, don't pick. Yeah, probably better, probably smarter. Mocha says, but there are turtles. Yes, there are turtles. Keeps me company. Paul says, dang. Don't think of it as you lost out to Mocha. Think of it as Mocha won. I don't know. There's a better way to think of it. But yeah, it's I almost was going to say fulfilling place to be, but it's not fulfilling. It's actually emptying. The exact opposite of fulfilling. That every time I think I've reached a level of fulfillment, I find that I need to be emptied of that in order to find my place in reality itself. Fulfilling is all, it's all illusions. It's all, again, chasing after those shiny objects. And I don't just mean materially, the shiny objects of spiritual attainment that I've reached. I joke with Mocha all the time about reaching level 5 in my vegan powers, and that through my veganism, I am at one with all animals. But it's all about emptying. There's no spiritual achievement. There's only spiritual emptying, realizing ourselves as that emptiness itself. And when we do realize that we are empty, we get back to the Heart Sutra with the key word being is. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. It's not that emptiness becomes form, and it's not that form regresses back to emptiness one day. It's the exact same thing instantly, right now, which is why I love banging on my desk to make that point. Because my desk is 99.99.99% emptiness, and yet I get to bang on it at the same time. Not to mention occasionally stub my toe on it. Destiny says we have to learn to unlearn and relearn. We were taught so many that weren't actually the truth. Yes, that's exactly it. Some beliefs serve us, some keep us anchored in what was before. we sort of have to learn not to be without beliefs, but to hold them lightly, to know that they serve us and we don't serve them. We're not supposed to serve our beliefs. Our beliefs are supposed to serve us, and that we rise up. That's why the Buddha said um, his teachings were a raft. Use them to get to the other shore. When you're there, let the raft go. I think I mentioned this before, and I believe Paul from Oregon said, well, what happens if you get to another river? Which is a good point, and I'm not sure the Buddha thought this all the way through. I think he needed a Paul from Oregon in his life to ask him these all-important questions. So that's where things fall. Here's a wonderful thing about realizing our emptiness. We can more readily say, more easily say, emptiness is capacity, and the role of capacity is to hold everything. Through our emptiness, we hold the entire world, the entire universe. I always urge everyone to read Douglas Harding's On Having No Head. Short book. I doubt it's over 50 pages. Paul says Buddha found things for me to keep him busy, like a small child. Yeah, running errands, sweeping, ancient Tonka trucks made out of logs. I don't even know if people know what Tonka trucks are anymore. It's probably the first time I've actually said Tonka truck in 40 years. So, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I'm trying to keep things tight between the 30 and 45-minute mark. Always hate wrapping things up early when I have good friends popping by. And I do appreciate it very much. Again, anyone wants to have a live conversation and bat stuff around, would be honored, would be a lot of fun as well. Mocha says, let the raft go and the turtles will take care of it. This is true. And you know what I found? If you have turtles in your life, you don't need much else. There's a good word to end on. If you have turtles in your life, you don't need much else. Paul says, take care. Mocha, Destiny, and Eric, and Paul, you take care too. Mocha, have a good class. Let me know how it goes. Let me know how she has a quiz. Let me know how your quiz goes. Destiny Forever Walks, PhD. Thank you again for coming, and thank you for sharing your insights. Always appreciated. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care, guys.